All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back every Saturday. Well, it's supposed to be Saturday night, but I went to see my wife's mother out in the country. That was a very different experience. But today we're going to be going through what I could have done last night. I apologize for that, but one of those things you got to do in the family to go see her mother. So we are here, and without a doubt, we're going to chop it up really nicely. So tonight, I really want you guys to focus in on what this white bullshit is about. And you can't make it any better than somebody white telling you what it is. And it is absolutely nothing. And this is what we need to get into our head. We've been hijacked, dumbed down, and not thinking worth a damn. So I'm going to go to the share screen. Oh, what's up, brother Willie? I appreciate you, man. Like always, Joe. I always can count on you, and I love you for that. But yeah, you know we're gonna get it on and popping tonight. So we're gonna really get into the mindset of these demons we call white folks, and what their own people are saying about themselves. But they know they ain't shit, and they're playing the Wizard of Oz game. And as long as you are going to fall for it and not learning your true history, you boo the fool, not them. They know who you are. They know you are the gods of the planet, and every square mile, 197 square miles on this planet, belong to black folks, the Moors. And it was painfully obvious that, as a African proverb said, when two brothers fight, the stranger in the middle gets the key to the house. We can't afford to fight. That's exactly how we lost this time. But 3 strikes you out, white boy. There ain't no more coming back. We're going to dominate you and put you in chains like you've never been before. You've been there, but I'm just saying. We're under this white boy living arrangement, I guess, if I can say that. Cloudy days when we know that all we need to do was to knock down the towers of change that has allowed us to get to this point. Because they know white folks ain't that smart. Now, I'm not being crazy or saying things out of pocket. I'm telling you what the facts are. This has been proven already, and I've gone over this time and time and time again throughout my videos. And the idea is really simple. The father and mother of all humanity is the black man and woman. Now you're gonna have to excuse me because they popping tonight with the music. So I'm gonna try to play the video as loud as possible, kind of drown it out. But first we got this guy I love this guy. He just straight up, no bullshit, no nonsense kind of guy. He's an Arab, but he's telling you how white folks are and how they are not. I'll be right back. We're going to play 1717.
I suppose the first thing that you have to do is actually relocate the conversation about so-called white people into some semblance of reality. See, this is what you always have to do. SubhanAllah. This is what you always have to do with Americans and with Westerners generally. You always have to state the obvious. They make you state the obvious. There's no way whatsoever to talk about anything within their frameworks. Within their frameworks, you can't talk about anything because
not in their framework,
all of their
not in their narrative.
Is far off from anything like reality, anything even resembling reality. They start from a point of hallucination. They start from a point of fiction. They start from a point of fantasy, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting.
Did you hear that? Hallucination fantasy and a false narrative of supremacy. White supremacy is a how did I go? Is a failed illusion. Um, they are scared of black supremacy. It didn't go like that. I'm trying to remember as I go, but it'll come to me. But white folks been playing um, uh, this fantasy game, this Wizard of Oz game, and you got to know the deal and who these people are. They're troglodytes. They're not white. They're not Caucasian. Not Aryan. They're Anglo-Saxon. None of that. All of that belongs to black folks. And you got to know this, black man, black woman, black child. Because I can remember I was playing some video and this little, she couldn't have been no more than 7 years old, holding her head down, asking herself and her mother why the white kid treat her bad like that. They treat her bad because they know you are above them. Period. And this is the reason why our kids are so baffled about this bullshit. Call them what the fuck they are. Troglodyte Niger is the scientific term, or nigger. Period. We civilized these people 3 times. Period. There's no more. 3 strikes, you're out. Period. We're done with that bullshit. Let's continue.
Because they've got you always having to argue your way back to the obvious. You always have to argue your way back. There's never been a people, subhanAllah, in history that I know of that is so contentious about basic factual reality. They waste everybody's time, and they derail any
What I wanted to say, white supremacy is an overreaction to black. White supremacy is an overreaction to black oppression. That's what I wanted to say. There you go.
or any serious discussion, always, by just the continuous litigation of things that are actually common knowledge. The litigation of things that are actually common sense, self-evident truth. This is part of what I mean about why no normal people in the world can ever usefully engage with Americans or with Westerners generally. You can't. Because you enter every single interaction. Westerners, you enter every single interaction by insulting our intelligence. I've said this before. This is one of the things that you really need to know about them. This is something that you really must know about Americans and about Westerners. Every interaction is always and only used by them as an opportunity to validate themselves and validate their fabricated framework. This is literally the only thing that they're interested in. Always, at all times. This is where you hear me using the caveat or using the qualifier so-called so many times when I talk. So-called civilization, so-called white, so-called black, so-called race, so-called enlightenment, and what have you. Because none of these things are real things. These are all things that are just elements in their frameworks. And those frameworks are intended to obscure reality. They're false claims. You understand?
False
so
claim.
whenever I use those terms, or whenever I refer to those things, I always try to remember to add that qualifier or add that caveat. Because we do have to try to anchor our conversation as much as possible in actual reality. And that includes denying the reality of their unreality, because they always occupy an intellectual position of unreality on every single issue. The so-called rational, so-called reasoning, scientific method following West. So we have to start with the reality. We have to start with the reality. And even with that, there are layers. There are layers in this reality, okay? So there's no such thing as white people. Physically, I'm saying. Physically. You know, I remember reading the transcripts of Stephen Biko's trial, and no one said it better than him. White people, physically, are generally pink more than anything else. Beige, maybe. So-called black people are just different shades of brown. I mean, I know it might seem pedantic or what have you to mention something like this. It might seem petty to mention this, but again, let's try to bring things back to reality.
What does Said Paulson mean when he say the origin? That it's obvious that white people are the origin. That everything started with the whiteness. Everything started with came from Europe and all of that. When we talk about violence, it started with the whiteness. It started from Europe. When we talk about bad governance, when we talk about bad influence, when we talk about inhumanity, when we talk about disrespect, when we talk about oppression, when we talk about humiliation, when we talk about manipulation, when we talk about destruction, like all these things did not start not with anybody else, not blacks, not any other person. It always started with the whiteness. It always came from Europe. It never originated from this other part. It never originated with the black people. When they say, you see, white people have always been trying to blame black people, saying that blacks are third world, black countries are third world countries, and many other things. That black people, you know, they are uncivilized, they are violent, they love chaos. Even if you go to America, you're going to realize that in America, everything bad is associated to a black person. Everything, criminalism, like all things that are not good. When they're reporting a case or something that, for example, somebody has died somewhere, or they have lost their lives, or there's been killings, there's been assassination somewhere, if it's in the black community, they will escalate it in a certain manner that you look at it and say, black people are bad. They associate other people. They associate Islams with criminalism. Islams have been associated with criminalism. You're going to see how Islams are being called criminals and all of that. How these countries like Iran, countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, on all these countries, they have been associated with criminalism. But the biggest question is, it is okay if there is criminalism anywhere, we accept it, it's fine. But the question is, where did all these started from? What was the root cause of all these things? Did black people knew violence before white people coming to Africa? They did not. Did they knew killing each other? Did they knew chaos? Did they knew fighting? Who introduced other people to guns? It was white people. Who introduced other people to war? It was white people. It never came from the black people's land. It never originated from here. It never started with the Islams and all of that. Because when somebody comes to your vicinity, or somebody comes to your ground, or to your to your area, and begins causing chaos that is affecting you directly, obviously a time comes when you're going to retaliate. What happened with the black people and the white people is the fact that black people retaliated because they couldn't hold it no more. They had to fight back. But who taught black people to fight? It was white people. Who taught others violence? Who taught others oppression? Who taught others criminalism? They were criminals before some criminals maybe came from other parts of the world and all of that. They were violent before violence began existing in other parts of the world. They were oppressors before people knew about oppressors. So they are the best teachers of oppressors. They taught other people oppression. They were distractors. They were greedy before greediness entered the puppets that are in Africa right now. They were corrupt before corruption entered the leaders in Africa today, the leaders in the whole world today. You see, they were manipulators before other people started manipulating other people. Our governments in Africa, they are behaving like the white governments because they've been taught to be like that. That is how they've been taught. That is how they're doing things. Why? Because they have been taught to do that. Where did all this come from? It came from the white people. It came from Europe. So Shahid Bolsen is coming out clearly and saying the origin is the white people. They are the origin of all these bad things they complain about, all these bad things they sing around. So before they start pointing fingers to other people, first of all, they need to understand that the problem started with them. They are the origin of every single problem existing. It is that simple. Take a look at this video, this speech. It's a very interesting speech. And then as you're watching it, prepare your thoughts, have them shared in the comment section, and I'll do my best to make sure I read all the comments and give a response where possible. I am Atamahed. This is African Streamlet. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share, and don't forget to subscribe. But until then, let's take a look at the video.
Instead of telling you about how amazing Toonbi really is, why don't I just show you?
Hold on.
Let's say we want
Actual black and actual white, black and white are opposites. So there's an embedded implication when you talk about people being white and black. You understand me? So again, I mean, I'm sorry, but this is what I mean. This is exactly what I mean. Their frameworks are layer upon layer upon layer of dishonesty and unreality. I wouldn't have to pick apart so much if there wasn't so much to pick apart. You understand me? So physically, white is not a real category. Humans don't come in these colors. We're not birds or something, cats or dogs or what have you. Human beings don't come in those colors. So let's dispense with that false construction from the outstart. It's moronic. And it only exists for political and economic reasons, for ideological functions in service to political and economic reasons. Now again, I'll repeat, because you did invent these categories and this method of compartmentalization and discrimination, and because your society actively treats people according to these categories, so-called black and so-called white, they exist as real things in these terms. Because you act like any of this is real, because you act like it's real, so now you have created very different experiences for people, which means different histories for people, different communities, different identities, and so forth, all on the basis of your fabricated category. So we have to make that distinction. In reality, in actual reality, so-called black and so-called white do not exist among humankind. But because you treat them like they do, because you classify human beings this way, now you force this to become an experiential reality for people. You understand? Now it is an experience that people have in this world, have in their lives, in their minds, in their psyches, in their identity, all based on a completely warped and entirely unjustifiable framework. See, you created this problem for mankind. You created this problem for mankind. Because before you created this problem, people just came from different places. People just had different physical characteristics. People had different backgrounds, different heritage, different lineage, different cultures, and so forth. Different languages, different customs, different practices, different beliefs, and what have you. And human beings all around the world just acknowledge the obvious reality that people who come from different places and come from different environments and come from different climates, they have their own qualities. And generally speaking, it was inconsequential to most people how people looked. That wasn't considered a particularly interesting aspect of any home, of any folk, of any nation, of any people.
Yeah.
I mean, do you understand? As a so-called racial category, as an identity, as a thing that means something, that's supposed to mean something about who you are and about who you're supposed to be loyal to and about what group you belong to, the so-called concept of whiteness is only about 350, 400 years old. That's it. That's the whole lifespan of this supposedly fundamental, self-evident category of human beings. 350 years, maybe 400 years or so. I mean, in the full scope, in the full sweep of recorded human history, that's nothing. I mean, yes, of course, like I said, people would notice lighter or darker complexion. They would notice that for as far back as people had lighter or darker complexion and eyes to see it with. But it wasn't a source of identity. It wasn't a source of categorization or a reason for categorization. And certainly not anything hierarchical. It was not a racial, so-called racial concept. Like there was no pan-European white race or something. That didn't exist. It was just an incidental feature, a superficial feature, believed by most people to be climate-related or location-related or so forth. So you didn't even come up with this foolishness until your so-called enlightenment. That's when you came up with this foolishness, when you got enlightened. You had this racial epiphany, and it just happened to coincide with colonization and the transatlantic slave trade. What a coincidence. Before that, Europeans didn't think of themselves as white. Not once, not ever. The English thought of themselves as English. The Irish thought of themselves as Irish. The Germans thought of themselves as German, and the French thought of themselves as French, and so forth. There was no white brotherhood, no shared white culture. They despised each other. They detested each other. Genuinely, deeply, violently, generationally, they despised each other. There was no such thing as pan-European solidarity. There was no white fraternity. That never existed in history. There were centuries upon centuries of tribal hatred, border raiding, religious slaughter, dynastic warfare, and the systematic exploitation of every neighboring group whenever the opportunity presented itself. The 100 Years' War, that was England and France on and off for over a century, for 100 years. The 30 Years' War, it was so the 30 Years' War was so destructive that it killed somewhere between a quarter to 40% of the entire population of Germany, what's now Germany.
Now I'm going to stop it here and give a little bit of sweetener to this. The 100-Year War, 30-Year War, and all of that had happened was between the black nobility and the so-called peasants that were running the ground. Uh, what do they call that? The landlords were the black people. This is where you get the word landlord from. That were attached to the land that they owned. The people were so-called Yurugus, Tamahus, Troglodytes. These are the ones that we put into uh, effective slavery. The word slave comes from the word Slavic Indo-European people. Let's get this right. So when he talks about how that 100-Year War, 30-Year War, and there was no unity amongst the white people, that didn't happen until the A. La Chapelle Treaty. A. La Chapelle. I'm not gonna guess. I'm gonna look for A. La Chapelle. Is that right? A. La Chapelle Treaty. A. La Chapelle Treaty. I'm trying to get the date because I don't want to just blurt it out. In 1748, okay, the Treaty of La Chapelle signed on October the 18th ended the War of the Austrian Succession and involved major powers like Britain, France, and Dutch. So when you look at the French, Dutch, and Britain, they were going up against the Moorish Empire uh, from the land of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. That was our empire from this side of that would be the equator? From this side of the land, North America, to our other part of the land in Africa, to the shores of Tripoli. That wasn't just a song. That was enigmatic of what our history was and how big and how enormous and how massive our empire was, the Moorish Empire. So when you're looking at that, and then Eli Chappelle was basically saying, I look like you're the white boy. I look like you are the white boy. You look like me are the white boy. Let's try to band together. Because if we don't come together, the Moors are going to rule over us forever. That's what it basically is. Let's continue.
Europeans doing that to other Europeans. So-called white people doing that to other so-called white people. The War of the Roses. Butchering each other for a crown, for the throne. The English occupation of Ireland. That happened centuries before they ever went to Africa or anywhere else. With the same logic of extraction and displacement and engineered famine, they perfected that on the Irish people, white people, so-called. White people being colonized by so-called white people. There's your Aryan Brotherhood. So let's get clear. Let's get clear on what Europe actually was before the concept of whiteness was invented. Because it is a completely invented concept. For most of recorded European history, the overwhelming majority of Europeans lived in abysmal squalor. Absolutely abysmal squalor. You can't imagine the conditions. You would recognize it today as extreme poverty if it even exists anywhere today. I'm talking about a level of destitution that's difficult to comprehend from a modern point of view, from a modern vantage point. Medieval European peasants, and peasants was most of them, the vast majority, about 4 out of every 5 people was a peasant. They lived in a one-room hut, dirt floors. They shared it with their livestock, literally. Their animals slept in the same space that they slept in for warmth, sleeping with your goats and sleeping with your pigs. That's your history. The average life expectancy at birth was in the mid-30s. Half of all children died before the age of 5. 1 in 5 women died in childbirth. Famine was absolutely common. It was routine. The Great Famine of the early 14th century killed 10 to 15% of all of Europe's entire population. Then the Black Death came, the bubonic plague. And that took out another third, or some say up to a half of the population of Europe.
Now, the bubonic plague wasn't because of some infection or some bug. That was due to the hairiness of the people that wiped out a good section or swath of black nobility. That is the reason, one of the reasons why we could not hang on to the control of Europe. A true European is a black man and woman, period. Get that shit in your fucking head. These people had no power. These people had no brain. These people had no nothing. They get it from us.
This is the conditions that they came from. So understand the real history of the people that we're talking about here. Okay, there was never in history some kind of block of so-called white unity or white fraternity. Nobody ever thought like that. Nobody had anything even remotely like that in their mind. And during all that time, by the way, the church, your church, they owned up to a third of all the land in Europe. The aristocracy owned almost everything else. And the peasants worked the land. They couldn't leave the land. They had to pay tithes to the church. They had to pay taxes to the feudal lord. They couldn't leave the land. They couldn't even get married without permission. They were literally legally bound to the soil, not metaphorically, legally bound. You were a serf. You were a serf. You came with the property. You understand?
That's what I just said. They came with the property. This is where the word landlord comes from. The landlord were black people, the global nobility. I don't give a fuck where it was. Was it Russia, Prague, Czechoslovakia, the true anything. Aboriginal people of every part of this globe were black people. Now, when you look at the 30-year war, 100-year war, whatever the case may be, the land was tied. The serf were tied to the land. So when you bought the land, you bought the serf too. Now, you want to call a serf a slave a serf? It's still the same shit. Yo, fuck what you call it.
With the property. If the land was sold, you were sold with it. That's your history. You weren't human beings. You were farm tools. You were instruments. Instruments for other people who you would later classify as white, but who did not see you and who did not treat you in any way whatsoever as equals. They didn't even treat you as human beings. They didn't treat you as people. White on white subjugation.
Well, he's wrong about that one. The people who ran the land, who were the landlords, had white serfs, or what we would call to be considered white today. They were the Urugus and Tamahu, period. Troglodytes.
Predation. That's the history of Europe. That's the history of Europe. White on white violence. White on white war, conflict, and strife. And if you're paying attention, that's Europe's future too. That's their future too. That's where they're going. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice that not much at all has changed. Even after they started calling themselves so-called white instead of calling themselves English, or calling themselves white instead of French or German or what have you. The same system is essentially what you have right now in America. That's the feudal system. Europe's great civilizational achievement, the feudal system, before they went out and colonized everyone else. And that's still what you have today. In fact, it's the only organizational approach that you have to your society, centuries later. Now, I've talked before about how in Europe, across Europe, before Christianity, these people were pagans. They worshipped the jinn. They had relationships with the jinn, with the shayateen. That's not me saying so. This is the historical record. This is the historical record. The Germanic tribes, Odin, Thor, they had blood sacrifices. Yes, blood sacrifices. They did that. They did animals mostly, but they also did human sacrifices, and that is documented. They sacrificed human beings. The Norse people too. Seasonal ritual offerings, that included humans. The Vikings and whatnot. We all know they used to hurl old people off of the mountaintops. When they got too old, they'd throw them off a cliff. You had the Druids among the Celtic people. They had these large wicker structures into which they would put human beings, and they would set them on fire, burn them alive as offerings.
Now, we should know the Danes, the Dutch, the old original English, the Thor, all predicated on African mythology. And the Vikings were black, so he wrong, not kind of, he wrong.
Through the people, the devils that they worshiped commanded them to do all sorts of heinous things. This is the history. The days of the week in English still carry the names of their pagan gods, their Germanic false gods. Wednesday is Woden's day. Thursday is Thor's day for Thor. Friday is Frigg's day. Saturday is the Saturn, the day for Saturn. Your calendar is an artifact of your mushrik satanic history. You can't deny it. And Christianity, when it came to Europe, when it came to Europe, it did not actually displace any of this. It adapted to it, or rather, it got adapted by it. European Christianity is very foreign to what they practice in the region where Nabi Isa, where Prophet Jesus actually lived. I mean, calling their religion Christianity is like saying that Pat Boone's version of Little Richard's song sounds the same. You still had idol worship. You still had polytheism, praying to Mary, praying to saints and whatnot. Your pagan festivals got Christian names. Your pagan sacred sites got churches built on top of them. And the folk traditions, the charms, the hexes, the magical beliefs, the nature worship and whatnot, all of this persisted for centuries underneath the official religion. And in fact, they still do persist. You have to take note of that. It's very important to take note of that. I told you before, people talk about China, people talk about India or Egypt or what have you, but Europe probably has the longest continuous congruent culture on the earth. They have been incredibly resistant to changing or developing. It's astonishing. Whatever comes to them becomes like them, or else they'll fight tooth and nail against.
Hold on.
This is a culture that cannot be reformed. It cannot be reformed. It can only be papered over. That's all they've ever done. They rebrand, but they don't change. There's only ever been cosmetic changes to that culture. And this is extremely important for you to understand. Because it's a serious mistake to think that so-called Western civilization is a modern thing. People think of it like that. People think of it like that. As if Europeans just suddenly sprang forth as a totally changed people after the Dark Ages. They sprang forth as these great enlightened, rational, scientific, humanitarian thinkers or something out of nowhere. They like to partition their history like that. They like to partition their history. There was the before and there's the after. That's this sort of partitioning. That was then, this is now. Let's not talk about the then. But no, understand, this is an ancient people. This is an ancient people, and they are more resistant to change and more resistant to reform and rehabilitation than any other people on the face of this earth. You think industrialization changed them? Like, as soon as they got machines and as soon as they got gunpowder, somehow that caused a sudden, rapid maturation process, a refinement and advancement in their character? No, not at all. You know how like the West, the term the West is synonymous with modernity, as if some highly advanced, intelligent life form, some extraterrestrial life forms landed in Europe in the 1800s, and they have no other history before that. No, this is a people, the European people. This is a people who are ancient, and whose ways and whose culture has remained absolutely consistent for the last 10,000 years. I'm telling you, things that they were doing and ways that they were acting 10,000 years ago, they were doing those same things 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, 10 years ago, and this morning. They're pre-modern in the modern age. It's 2026, but they're still prehistoric. I'm telling you, in their minds. So you understand, I'm talking about the origins of the culture, the origins of the system that you're all in over there in America right now.
We're going to get into that.
The origins and the originators. And that's the culture and that's the system that all of you have absorbed, that all of you have been affected and infected by. No matter where you sit in the social and economic hierarchy of that country. It doesn't matter. Yes, it doesn't matter. You're seeing the world through a prehistoric lens. And it's not even the lens of your own original culture. The original lens of your own actual people, if you're a so-called minority in America, a member of the global majority in America. That lens has been grafted onto your perspective. Now you can't even see through your own natural eyes anymore. You only see through their eyes.
Aquí vamos a aprender a hacer videos como este, donde aterrizamos en la prehistoria con los dinosaurios. También nos pondremos en cámara.
See, everything that Europe was about for the last 10 millennia, they brought that over to America when they started that mess. Except that they honed it, they streamlined it, they whittled it down to its core base components. America is the concentrated version. And with every single year, every passing year, they get more and more down to the bone about it. They get more and more down to the bone. They whittle it more down. I'm telling you that they're going more and more back to the original version, the 10,000 years ago version. And you know that occult tradition I was talking about, with the jinn worship in Europe, that didn't die out with so-called modernity and the Industrial Revolution, whatever, the Satanism, the jinn worship, and what have you. No, it went covert. It went covert, and then it re-emerged in like the 18th century, 19th century. Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, the Hermetic Order, Aleister Crowley, Theosophy. I've talked about that before. This is all European, all emerging from what their scholars call the Western esoteric tradition, which is nothing but a continuous thread running from pre-Christian paganism through the Renaissance to the occult revival into the modern secret societies that were behind, or that shaped anyway, the founding of America itself. I mean, you know that the founding fathers were not what you would call Orthodox or normal Christians. Many of them were so-called deists. A significant number of them were Freemasons. Washington was, Franklin was, Hamilton was, and so forth. Okay, so that's your founding spiritual heritage. Again, these are just historical facts. This is just for the record and from the record. This is the background. This is the genealogy of your society. You know, when I talked about before, when someone online is wearing filters, or someone has had extensive cosmetic surgery done to try to make themselves look more beautiful than they are naturally. Well, there are two underlying elements to that, or maybe three motives. I mean, not elements, motives. One is a sense of inadequacy, and the other is envy. And the third motive is that old predatory motive. You know, the filter as camouflage, as a hunting strategy. Look like what you're not, because if you look like what you are, you won't be able to get close to your prey. So you have to change your appearance and make yourself prettier. So the envy is real. The civilizational envy is real. And the sense of inadequacy is real. European Renaissance, so-called, they'll tell you that that was the great sort of spontaneous flowering of great Western genius. But no, the Renaissance was a copy and paste project. That was copy and paste. Arabic texts were translated into Latin in Toledo and in Sicily. The Islamic world had preserved and had corrected and had improved Greek philosophy, medicine, mathematics, and astronomy, while the Europeans were in what they called their Dark Ages. While they were still in their Dark Ages. They called it the Dark Ages because Europe was dark. The rest of the world wasn't dark. Baghdad wasn't dark. They had the House of Wisdom. They was producing brilliant scholars, one after another. Cordoba was the most literate city in all of Europe because of us. We made it that, with libraries that dwarfed anything available in the rest of the continent, Europe, or in France, in the UK, what have you. While they were still defecating where they stood, their aristocrats were defecating where they stood, their peasants were dying of disease and being told by their priests that the earth was the center of the universe. We gave you algebra. Ibn Sina's Canon of Medicine was the standard medical textbook in European universities all the way up until the 17th century. The numerals that you use, the Arabic numerals, they're Arabic numerals. And that came to you through the Islamic world from India. The concept of zero, without which your entire computational civilization is impossible. That came by that same route. The navigational tools that enabled European exploration, the astrolabe, and so forth, improvements to the compass and so on, all of that came from us. All of that came from the Muslim world, from the Islamic world, and you took it. Paper came from China, also through the Islamic world to Europe. And then you used that paper to write your claims of civilizational superiority. And then after having absorbed all of this information that we provided to you, after you translated it, after you adapted it, and in most cases you did not credit the source of it, Europe then got to proclaim itself as the summit, the pinnacle of human achievement. The Athens miracle, the Greek miracle, Western tradition, which later became great white tradition, all rising up from the brilliant philosophers of Athens. The irony is that when you came up with the concept of whiteness, Greeks themselves weren't even included as white. You know, you talk about Rome, but you didn't even consider Italians as white either. Yes, you didn't even think of the people who you now hail as the originators of white Western civilization, the Athenians and the Romans. You didn't even consider those people as white. See, this is another layer of the unreality in your frameworks. The precise origin of the racial concept is documented. We know Bacon's Rebellion in Virginia in 1676. Black and white indentured servants, both of them indentured servants, enslaved Africans and poor European workers, united in an armed uprising against the planter class. They burned down Jamestown. They terrified the colonial elite because what they demonstrated was that class was more real to these people than the color line. Poor Europeans and enslaved Africans had more in common with each other than they had in common with the people at the top, than they had with the plantation owners. So the elite manufactured the solution. They created slavery. And within 30 years of the Bacon's Revolution or rebellion, Virginia had passed the slave codes of 1705, legally defining who was white and what whites were entitled to, and what Africans could be subjected to. For the first time in legal history, white appeared as a formal category with attached privileges. In exchange for those privileges, they were conscripted into the enforcement of the racial order. That's what whiteness is. That's what whiteness is at its origin. It's not a biological fact, obviously. It's not even a cultural heritage. It's a loyalty badge. It's an agreement between the planter class and the poor European workers. We will give you a psychological wage. We'll give you a status, a rung above someone else on the ladder. And in exchange for that, you agree to defend the system that is also exploiting you. Because at least you're not at the bottom. So be thankful for that. David Roediger called this the wages of whiteness. W.E.B. Du Bois identified it even before him. Read Theodore Allen. He documented it extensively. Theodore Allen. The mechanism is not disputed. This is a historical reality. And from that point on, whiteness was elastic. The definition of who counted as white would shift based on the needs of the economy and the needs of the political moment. The Irish, my ancestors, they came to America in the millions, fleeing from the Great Famine, which wasn't a famine at all, but it was an imposed starvation, because occupied white Ireland, occupied by the white English, they were forced to export their food to white England because the British needed their grain more than the Irish apparently needed to live. 1 million Irish people died. Another million of them emigrated. And when they arrived in America, they were not considered white. You see political cartoons from Harper's Weekly that depicted them with ape-like features alongside similar caricatures of black Americans. They were called white Negroes. Frederick Douglass, when he met the Irish in Ireland, he saw for himself what the British colonialism had done to them, and he said it wasn't very much different from what had been done to his people. He couldn't help but note the irony of the Irish immigrants arriving in America and immediately taking the side of the slaveholders so that they could claim the privilege of whiteness that they had been denied at home. The Irish became white in America by doing what whiteness required, distancing themselves from black Americans, so-called black Americans, filling the police forces, and enforcing the racial order. See, they paid the admission price. And this, by the way, no matter how many St. Patty's Day parades you hold over there in America, no matter how much green beer you drink, no matter how many shamrocks you plaster on your jacket, this behavior of the Irish immigrants coming to America has alienated the Irish in Ireland from Irish Americans forever, because they adopted the oppressor's lens. They absorbed the oppressor's culture. And like I say, even the Italians were not white. In the American South, listen to this, in the American South in the late 19th century, Italians, particularly from the southern part of Italy, they were classified somewhere between white and black. They lived in black neighborhoods. They were basically segregated in terms of where they lived. They worked alongside black workers. They were sometimes subject to the same Jim Crow restrictions. And in 1891, in New Orleans, 11 Italian immigrants were dragged from a prison by a mob, and they were all lynched. And this is actually the largest mass lynching in American history, Italians. The men had already been acquitted in court, but it didn't matter. They were acquitted, but it didn't matter. The mob came for them anyway, and that mob was led by some of the most prominent citizens in New Orleans. Citizens who later became mayors, who later became governors, and renowned politicians. I bet you didn't know that that's the origin of Columbus Day, the lynching of Italian Americans. Yes. Because it caused an international incident, and the United States government had to pay a small reparation to their families, and as a symbolic concession to Italian Americans, they created Columbus Day as a federal celebration in 1892. Imagine. And that's how Italians became white. It's an incoherent concept on every level of terms. The Polish, the Slavs, the Eastern Europeans, and so forth, they were categorized in the early 20th century by American eugenicists as racially inferior to Northwestern Europeans. You see, I told you they've always detested each other. They can't stand each other. There's a book by Madison Graham called The Passing of the Great Race, and they explicitly ranked Eastern Europeans as below the Anglo-Saxons and the Nordics. You know, Trump is going on and on about immigration and so forth, talking about bad hombres, and they're not sending us their best people and so forth, as if the best of any country would ever set foot in America. But there was an immigration act called the Immigration Restriction Act in 1924, and that was specifically designed to limit Eastern European immigration because they saw Eastern European people as racially undesirable in their country. That's what their so-called scientists told them. Don't even talk about the Jews. The Jews, obviously, they were classed completely separately from all other types of people. Those same eugenicists who ranked the Slavs also ranked the Jews, and they said that they were a distinct and threatening racial category. Madison Grant, Lothrop started the whole American academic mainstream of eugenics. Understand, these were not fringe figures. These were Harvard professors. They were cited by legislators. Think about that when you glorify those Ivy League schools. And when you think about your senators, or you think that your senators or your congresspeople actually stand for some kind of moral value. No, these Neanderthal bigots were among your most celebrated intellectuals, and they were nothing but Neanderthal bigots. Their work was translated into German, and it was praised by Adolf Hitler.
Neanderthal is just like saying troglodyte. He is correct.
He said that he had a debt. He owed a debt to American race science. He said that in Mein Kampf. Speaking of Germans, the Germans are the single largest ancestry group living in America today. Roughly 1 in every 7 Americans has German heritage. I also have German heritage on my mother's side. If you go back far enough, even the Germans themselves were categorized as barbarian. Now, they were pretty much always classified as white. Ever since white became a category, they were pretty much always considered white. But in America, they were subjected to intense suspicion and cultural erasure during both World Wars, World War I and World War II. There were even German Americans who were put into internment camps, like the Japanese were. Okay? Now, the English, that's the original template. That's the original WASP template, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. That's the foundational American identity. I think everyone knows that. That's the official, original version of American whiteness. Right? The Puritans of New England, the plantation aristocracy of Virginia, the Scot-Irish that settled in Appalachia and so forth. Those are the ones who later became known as the rednecks or the hillbillies or what have you. These are the building blocks. These are the building blocks of the founding cultural DNA of that country. I'm telling you, forget about white and actually learn about those people's history back where they came from. The Anglo-Saxons, the English, the French, the Germans, right? These are the main groups. These are your main groups in America. The origins of the American psyche. So when you know what they were like back in their lands of origin, if you know what they were like, then it's no wonder that the founding culture of America was built on stolen land, was built on enslaved labor, it was built on a set of decorative ideological documents declaring all men created equal, while viewing only their own kindred as men, their only skin tone as men. Understand, this isn't hypocrisy, not in the ordinary sense. No, they're being completely consistent. They're being completely consistent with their ancestral culture and their ancestral thinking. Dehumanization is an unspoken but fully understood and fully accepted component of their framing of equality. See, they'll say all people are equal, but what they won't say, but what they believe, is that not all people are people.
I could not have said it best or better. I rest my case. So, are there any questions about what's going on or what I've stated? Please, if you got a question, please, leave a comment or a question. I'm here. So, please check out my book that gets into the details of this. The White Man's Burden of Lies and Deceit. Hold on. This is book 2. The White Man's Burden of Lies and Deceit 2. Understanding White Supremacy and How That Started. Okay. And the first one, dealing with why white people hate black people so much. Now, you got to remember, the white people, we had them as our slaves. You see the black man as the true indigenous aborigine of the Americas standing on these people. we did not consider these people to be human, and they're not. Here you have the great Abraham Lincoln freeing the black prisoners of war, and also the danky ass troglodytes. And here, there's my first book, The White Man's Burden of Lies and Deceit 1, that detailed in detail almost or close to 1,000 pages of why white people hate black people so much. And so there you have it. I mean, please check the book out. It takes like 2-3 minutes to get it. The electronic file, right? I'm about to say electric file. The electronic file version. What the hell they call that? But it's an ebook. That's what I want to say. So hold on, let me get out of here. And yeah, and this one is a good one too. Please, ancestors, I need your guidance. Ooga booga. They're the ones who did all that shit. They don't have what we got. They want what we have. And this is the reason why they lie so damn much. Because they want to be black, they don't want to be black. And there you have it. Superman looks a hell of a lot better than the white boy. Because the sun is naturally energizing him through his melanin. And look at his pretty woman. I rest my case. So let's go on to the next one. So we've been covering Machiavellian Stoicism and Jessica O. And we're going to get into that now. So we got 22 minutes, and it's really important to understand Machiavelli, you guys, and how to deal with human nature, and what that means, how that means, why that means, and what proportion should it be applied, up to what extent. I'll be right back. Your growth does not create enemies. It reveals those who were comfortable with your weakness. Amen to that.
Before we begin, I want you to do something. Comment the word ascend if you've ever noticed people treating you differently the moment your life started getting better, and stay until the end of this video. Because what you're about to learn is something most people never understand. They think if they become successful, if they become stronger, if they become wiser, everyone will celebrate them. But that isn't how the world works. In fact, the moment you begin improving your life, the moment you start becoming the person you were always meant to be, some people will begin to hate you. Not because you harmed them, not because you betrayed them, but because your growth exposes something inside them that they desperately want to avoid. Listen carefully. Because Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He knew that power changes relationships, not because power corrupts, but because power reveals. And the same thing happens when you improve your life. Maybe you started going to the gym. Maybe you stopped wasting money. Maybe you became more disciplined. Maybe you finally started building a business. Maybe you stopped begging for attention. Maybe you started respecting yourself. At first, everyone seems supportive. They tell you they're proud of you. They encourage you. They smile. They clap. But then something strange happens. The better you become, the colder some people become, the stronger you become, the more criticism appears, the more successful you become, the more people begin finding reasons to dislike you. And you sit there confused. You wonder, what did I do wrong? Nothing. That's what makes this lesson so important. You did nothing wrong. You simply changed. And change is dangerous to people who refuse to change themselves. Think about it. As long as you stayed stuck, everyone felt comfortable. As long as you complained alongside them, everyone felt equal. As long as you settled for less, nobody had to question their own choices. But the moment you began rising, your existence became a mirror. And mirrors are uncomfortable, because they force people to confront the truth. Your discipline reminds them of their laziness. Your courage reminds them of their fear. Your success reminds them of their excuses. Your growth reminds them of their stagnation. And most people would rather attack the mirror than face what it reflects. This is why improvement often creates enemies. Not because you're becoming worse, but because you're becoming better. Machiavelli understood a brutal truth about human nature. People love seeing others improve, until that improvement surpasses them. People celebrate potential, but they often resent results. They'll support your dream, they'll support your plan, they'll support your idea. But when that dream starts working, when that plan starts succeeding, when that idea starts producing real results, suddenly the energy changes. Now the jokes begin. Now the criticism begins. Now the subtle disrespect begins. Because your success transforms from entertainment into competition, and many people can't handle that transformation. Watch carefully. The people who knew you when you were struggling often create an image of you in their minds. An old version, a weaker version, a smaller version. And when you outgrow that version, you force them to update their understanding of reality. Most people resist doing that. They become attached to who you used to be, not because they love you, because they need you. They need you to remain predictable. They need you to remain familiar. They need you to remain beneath certain limits, because your growth threatens the hierarchy they've created inside their minds. This is why some friends disappear when you improve. This is why some relatives become strangely distant. This is why some co-workers suddenly become hostile. You are no longer playing the role they assigned to you. And people become uncomfortable when someone refuses to stay inside the box they've built for them. Think about crabs in a bucket. One crab tries to climb out. The others pull it back down. Not because they're evil, not because they hate the crab, but because they cannot imagine escape. And if one crab escapes, the others must confront a painful possibility. Maybe they could have escaped too. Many people behave the same way. Your success becomes evidence that excuses are optional. Your discipline becomes evidence that change is possible. Your growth becomes evidence that transformation can happen. And that realization terrifies people who have built their identity around remaining the same. So instead of learning from you, they attack you. Instead of growing, they criticize. Instead of improving, they resent. And the most dangerous part? Some of these people will smile while doing it. They won't attack you openly. They'll disguise envy as concern. They'll disguise jealousy as advice. They'll disguise resentment as honesty. They'll say things like, "You've changed. You think you're better than everyone. Don't forget where you came from. You're doing too much. Why are you taking life so seriously?" But what they're really saying is, please become the old version of yourself again. Please stop making me feel uncomfortable. Please stop reminding me of what I'm not doing. And if you've ever experienced that, comment, "I see it now" below, because what we're about to discuss next is even darker. We're going to uncover why the people closest to you are often the first to resent your growth. And this lesson may be the most painful one in the entire video, because most people expect resistance from strangers. They expect criticism from enemies, but they never expect it from friends. They never expect it from family. They never expect it from the people who once claimed they wanted the best for them. Yet this is exactly where the strongest resistance often comes from. Machiavelli understood that familiarity creates expectations. The longer people know you, the more they become attached to a particular version of you, a version they understand, a version they can predict, a version that makes them feel secure. The moment you begin evolving beyond that version, you disrupt their reality, and disruption creates discomfort. Imagine a man who has spent years surrounded by friends who waste every weekend drinking, complaining, and blaming the world. Then one day he changes. He starts waking up early. He starts reading. He starts exercising. He starts building a business. He starts refusing distractions. Suddenly he notices something strange. The same people who used to invite him everywhere begin mocking him. They laugh at his goals. They make jokes about his discipline. They call him obsessed. They call him arrogant. They call him boring. But notice something. The behavior they criticize is the exact behavior producing results. The discipline they mock is creating success. The focus they ridicule is creating progress. The sacrifices they laugh at are creating freedom. So why attack it? Because every hour he spends improving himself highlights every hour they spend avoiding improvement. And people hate comparisons they cannot win, especially when those comparisons happen silently. Your success doesn't need to speak. Your actions speak for you. Every pound you lose, every dollar you earn, every skill you develop, every habit you build, every victory you achieve, becomes a reminder of what others are neglecting. And human beings are emotional creatures. far more emotional than logical. Many people would rather believe you're lucky than admit they're undisciplined. They would rather believe you're arrogant than admit you're focused. They would rather believe you've changed for the worse than admit you've changed for the better. Because the second they admit you've improved, they must confront the possibility that they could improve too. And responsibility is heavy. Excuses are comfortable. That's why envy rarely announces itself honestly. Nobody says, I dislike you because you're becoming successful. Nobody says, I resent you because your discipline exposes my weaknesses. Nobody says, your growth makes me insecure. Instead, they create stories that allow them to preserve their pride. They'll say you've become selfish. They'll say you've forgotten your roots. They'll say success got to your head. They'll say money changed you. They'll say power changed you. But often, the truth is simpler. You changed, and they didn't. That gap creates tension. A tension many people cannot tolerate. Now listen carefully, because this next point separates the wise from the naive. Not everyone who criticizes your growth hates you. Some people genuinely care. Some people offer valuable warnings. Some people see dangers you cannot see. The mistake is assuming every criticism comes from wisdom. It doesn't. Machiavelli advised leaders to judge people by motives rather than words. And you should do the same. Ask yourself, does this person challenge me because they want me to grow, or because they want me to stay the same? There is a massive difference. One type of criticism strengthens you, the other weakens you. One pushes you forward, the other pulls you backward. One comes from care, the other comes from fear. Learn to recognize the difference, because the world is full of people who will disguise their fear as advice. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake sabotage for guidance. Many dreams have died this way. Many ambitions have been buried this way. Many successful people never became successful because they listened to people whose opinions were rooted in insecurity. Think about this. If someone has never built what you're trying to build, why should their fear become your future? If someone has never achieved what you're trying to achieve, why should their limitations become your limits? Machiavelli knew that extraordinary results require extraordinary independence, not isolation. Independence, the ability to hear opinions without becoming controlled by them, the ability to receive criticism without becoming defeated by it, the ability to continue forward even when approval disappears, because approval is one of the most addictive drugs in existence. People abandon their dreams for approval. People betray themselves for approval. People remain average for approval. People stay small for approval. And that's exactly why so many never reach their potential. They are not controlled by enemies. They are controlled by the fear of being disliked. But here's the truth nobody wants to admit. If you become exceptional, someone will dislike you. If you become successful, someone will resent you. If you become powerful, someone will envy you. There is no path to greatness that avoids criticism. It doesn't exist. The question isn't whether people will judge you. The question is whether you'll allow their judgment to stop you. Because every meaningful transformation comes with a cost. And one of those costs is losing the approval of people who benefited from your weakness. Read that again in your mind. Some people benefited from your weakness. They benefited from your lack of confidence. They benefited from your self-doubt. They benefited from your fear. They benefited from your inability to say no. They benefited from your willingness to settle. And when you remove those weaknesses, you remove their advantages. That's when their behavior changes. That's when the masks begin falling off. That's when you discover who truly supports your growth and who only supported your dependence. If this is making sense, comment, no more prevention, because in the next part we're going to expose the darkest truth of all, why your success can make people feel personally attacked even when you've done absolutely nothing to them. This is where human nature becomes truly fascinating. And if you understand this lesson, you'll stop taking certain forms of hate personally forever. Because most hatred isn't actually about you. It's about what you represent. Think carefully about that. Most hatred isn't about you. It's about what you represent. A man loses 50 pounds. Suddenly people criticize him. A woman starts a successful business. Suddenly people gossip about her. Someone escapes poverty. Suddenly old friends begin acting strange. What changed? Not their character, not their kindness, not their values. What changed was what they represented. They became living proof that improvement is possible. And that's dangerous to people who have built their identity around excuses. Machiavelli understood that people often protect their beliefs more fiercely than they protect the truth. Why? Because beliefs become part of identity, and identity is sacred. Imagine someone who has spent 10 years telling themselves, nobody can succeed in this economy. Then you succeed. Your existence becomes a threat, not because you harmed them, but because you destroyed their excuse. Imagine someone who says all successful people are corrupt. Then you become successful while remaining honorable. Again, your existence becomes a threat, not because you attacked them, but because reality attacked their beliefs. The truth is that people become emotionally attached to the stories they tell themselves. And when your life contradicts those stories, they feel challenged, even if you never say a word. This is why some people become angry simply watching others win. Because success creates comparison, and comparison creates discomfort, especially when the successful person started from the same place they did. Notice something. People are often more threatened by the success of their peers than by the success of celebrities. A billionaire on television doesn't bother them much. But a former classmate buying a new house? That bothers them. A movie star becoming wealthy doesn't bother them much. But a friend starting a successful business? That bothers them. Why? Because peers remove excuses. Peers make success feel attainable. And attainable success creates accountability. That's why some people secretly prefer seeing distant success rather than local success. Distant success feels like fantasy. Local success feels like evidence, and evidence is difficult to ignore. Now here's where things become even more interesting. Some people don't hate your success. They hate the fact that they underestimated you. This is one of the deepest wounds to human pride. Many people create silent rankings in their minds. They decide who is smart, who is weak, who is capable, who is destined for success, who isn't, and once they place someone into a category, they become attached to that judgment. Then something unexpected happens. The person they underestimated starts winning. The quiet guy becomes powerful. The overlooked girl becomes successful. The rejected person becomes respected. The struggling person becomes wealthy. And suddenly their entire mental hierarchy collapses. Now they must confront an uncomfortable truth. They were wrong. And many people would rather dislike you than admit they misjudged you. That's why some of the loudest critics are often former doubters. Your success embarrasses their predictions. Every achievement becomes evidence against their judgment. Every victory becomes a reminder of their mistake. And pride doesn't enjoy reminders. Machiavelli knew that pride governs far more human behavior than most people realize. Pride starts wars. Pride destroys friendships. Pride ruins opportunities. Pride prevents growth. And pride often disguises itself as righteousness. Someone may act as though they're criticizing you because of principles. But beneath the surface, they're simply protecting their ego. They're defending an identity that feels threatened. Now pay close attention, because this next lesson can save years of frustration. When people start hating you after you improve your life, your first instinct may be to explain yourself, to defend yourself, to convince them, to make them understand. Don't. Most people are not looking for understanding. They're looking for confirmation. Confirmation of what they already believe. And no amount of explaining can change someone who is emotionally committed to misunderstanding you. This is one of Machiavelli's most practical lessons. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every critic deserves your attention. The more successful you become,
Cartoons make complex ideas easy to understand and are incredibly effective at teaching and study.
the more valuable your attention becomes. And attention is a currency. Spend it wisely. Because every minute spent arguing with envy is a minute stolen from your purpose. Every hour spent defending yourself is an hour not spent building yourself. Every ounce of energy spent chasing approval is energy unavailable for progress. The strongest people understand something powerful. Their results speak louder than their explanations. Their discipline speaks louder than their arguments. Their consistency speaks louder than their words. And over time, reality has a way of exposing the truth. The people who hated your growth will continue talking. You will continue growing. The people obsessed with criticizing you will remain focused on criticism. You will remain focused on improvement. And eventually, the distance between those two paths becomes enormous. One path leads to bitterness. The other leads to freedom. One path leads to resentment. The other leads to achievement. One path watches, the other builds. One path complains, the other creates. And here's the irony. Many of the people who criticize your growth today will one day ask how you did it. Many of the people who mocked your discipline will one day want your advice. Many of the people who doubted your vision will one day claim they believed in you all along, because success changes perception. People often respect what they once ridiculed. They admire what they once mocked. They celebrate what they once questioned, but only after the results become impossible to deny. If you've ever had someone doubt you before later changing their tune, comment, "They duped me," because we're about to uncover the final and most important lesson, the mindset Machiavelli would tell you to adopt when the world starts treating you differently because you're becoming better. This is the lesson that changes everything. Because understanding why people hate your growth is useful, but knowing how to respond to it is power. And power, as Machiavelli understood, is not about controlling others. It is about controlling yourself. The average person spends their life reacting to criticism, reacting to opinions, reacting to praise, reacting to rejection. Their emotions become a puppet controlled by other people. Someone compliments them and they're happy. Someone insults them and they're miserable. Someone approves of them and they're motivated. Someone disapproves of them and they quit. Their entire life becomes a prison built from other people's opinions. Machiavelli would look at this and see weakness. Because true strength begins the moment you stop allowing strangers to determine your value. The moment you improve your life, you must accept a difficult truth. Not everyone can come with you. Some people are meant for a chapter, not the entire book. Some people are meant for a season, not a lifetime. And holding on to people who resent your growth is like carrying anchors while trying to sail forward. Eventually, you must choose your future or their comfort, your purpose or their approval, your growth or their expectations, because you cannot have both. You cannot become extraordinary while remaining committed to being understood by everyone. You cannot rise while constantly asking permission to rise. You cannot transform while remaining loyal to the version of yourself you've outgrown. And that is what frightens many people. Not your success, not your discipline, not your confidence, but your willingness to leave behind the person you used to be. Most people never do. They spend decades protecting an old identity, an old story, an old set of limitations, an old version of themselves, even when that version is making them miserable. But the people who change their lives understand something different. They understand that growth requires letting go. Letting go of habits, letting go of excuses, letting go of fear, letting go of approval, and sometimes letting go of people, not out of hatred, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity, because not everyone wants to go where you're going. And that's okay. Your job is not to drag people toward a future they don't want. Your job is to continue walking toward the future you do want. Now listen carefully, because this may be the most important sentence in this entire video. Never shrink yourself to make insecure people comfortable. Never apologize for becoming stronger. Never feel guilty for becoming wiser. Never hide your ambition to protect someone else's ego. Never dim your light because someone else prefers darkness. The world already has enough people playing small. The world already has enough people living beneath their potential. The world already has enough people abandoning their dreams to satisfy the expectations of others. Don't become one of them. Machiavelli understood that respect often comes after resistance. First they question you, then they criticize you, then they resist you, then they watch you, then they imitate you, then they respect you, but only if you refuse to stop. That is the key. Refuse to stop. Not because people believe in you, not because people support you, not because people understand you, but because your purpose is bigger than their opinions. Your future is bigger than their doubts. Your potential is bigger than their limitations. And one day, when you look back at your journey, you'll realize something incredible. The criticism that once hurt you made you stronger. The rejection that once wounded you made you wiser. The envy that once confused you taught you who truly belonged in your life. And the hate that once discouraged you became proof that you were moving in the right direction. Because nobody throws stones at a tree with no fruit. Nobody envies someone going nowhere. Nobody resents a person who poses no challenge to their worldview. The very fact that people react to your growth is often evidence that your growth is real. So keep building, keep learning, keep improving, keep evolving, keep becoming. And remember this final lesson from Machiavelli. The crowd will often love the person you used to be because that person was predictable. But your destiny belongs to the person you are becoming. Choose your destiny every single time. If you made it to the end, comment "I choose growth." And if this message spoke to you, remember, the goal is not to make everyone comfortable. The goal is to become the strongest, wisest, most disciplined version of yourself. Because in the end, the people who hate your growth will still have to live with their choices. And you will have to live with yours. Make sure your choices build a life worth living. And never stop improving.
How long it takes a beginner?
I cannot make it any easier, you guys. I really just cannot. This is life. We have one fucking life to live, love, laugh, and learn. Those are the 4 L's that you must do with all your heart, soul, and mind. Whatever you want to do. Some people just don't want to be a millionaire, billionaire, and that's fine. But don't get to the point where, your check is your life is your check, and you can't do anything with it. $10,000 into a growth fund with Fidelity earns you about $3,000 a month. Imagine you got $100,000, that's 10 times that, that'll be $30,000 a month. $1 million, $300,000 a month, or whatever the case may be. So be aware, be conscious, be intelligent, be wise, be full of understanding. Learn to live to learn, because that's all of what is coming down to on your final day, your last breath. You must know and go that all of what you have done, you did it to the best of your ability, and let it go. If you have kids, young kids especially, teach them the way. Don't let it get to the point where you don't leave anything behind for your children, for your community. Everything is abundance and based on self-worth, self-growth, and community and community improvement. United, we stand and take over. Divided, we fall and stay in the same shithole. I'm searching my mind. I don't believe I can say it easier. 2 salaries is better than 1. 3 salaries is better than 1. Communicate with people of like mind and stick together. There were 4 sisters. I think they had like $25,000 apiece. They came together. Now it's close to, if not over, $1 billion now. They started a stock market fund. Now the stock market fund went from 100,000 to over $1 billion now. This was, hold on. Let me look at 4 black women. 4 black women. That women who started a wealth fund. Let me see. It should be here. Here we go. Is that it? Yeah. I don't want to just point out. I'll know it when I see it. But they were black women who started a wealth fund. And that wealth fund grew like 20 years ago to $500 million, and now I'm quite certainly well over $1 billion. I think this should, hold on. Let me go down the list and see. But they were on a major black magazine cover. What's one? On a major black magazine cover. But what the point I'm trying to make is, even if I can't find it, because I know I got it in my book, The White Man's Burden of Lies and Deceit, and The White Man's Burden to Understanding White Supremacy. So I know I got it there, so that's no big deal. I'm just thinking as I go. Yeah. So, but no problem. So the thing is that unity is our foundation. Has always been that. White folk can't stop us from doing a motherfucking thing unless we pay attention to that dumb shit. There was a brother who became sheriff in a small town in Mississippi, and he hired all of his Vietnam War buddies, whatever that war was, and they became deputy. White folks shut the fuck up. They weren't killing and calling niggas niggas. They came up missing and then found floating face up or face down in the river. He was killing them, but hush hush. The FBI never investigated shit. But he was the sheriff. I rest my motherfucking case. The white motherfucker can't do shit unless you allow him to do it. Nothing. Fuck him. Ku Klux Klan or not. The Ku Klux Klan is where they get that name Ku Klux Klan because this was a black organization. The headdress and all that come from Spain and the niggas there in Spain. I kid you not. That's in my book too. I'm very thorough. So now we're gonna go into the X-Files. And this is where I say that white folks' culture is imminent. The United States of America is the biggest producer and consumer of child porn. This is the white boy.
Of child in the world.
That is not an order we want.
Yeah, not at all, not at all. And so the demand was coming from Americans, and for years, for the 10 years that I was doing undercover work, I would be able to go in with my team in any city in the world, especially in Latin America, where foreigners would visit, everywhere from Puerto Vallarta to Cancun to everywhere in between, right? And immediately, within minutes, if you're walking with your wife, then nobody comes up to you. You're walking there by yourself or a couple guys. Immediately, guys would come up to us and say, "Hey, you want some blow? You want some cocaine? You want some girls?" And most of them would have connections with the guys who are selling minors in those areas. And so, again, the demand, the Americans going to the supply of these areas in South America.
It's their culture. I'll be right back. There's another one.
To be honest, about a very delicate issue.
Hold on, let me give you the background. Hidden camera in London catches senior rabbi telling abused victim to stay silent and never call the police. Rabbi raped a girl inside his Stamford Hill synagogue. Parents knew and stayed quiet, terrified of community shunning. Man, fuck you. That bitch would have been dead. I'll be right back.
Memories of bad things to me when I was younger. Someone who you may know of, who abused me when I was younger, when I was a child. And I'm looking for your advice, to be honest, what to do. I think it's someone you might have dealt with in the past. I think it's someone you might have dealt with in the past.
I imagine I know whom we are talking, and I'm glad we are dealing with. So
how is it being dealt with?
Under control.
It's under control. Are you involved in it with him? Are you involved in it and dealing with it?
I was involved, but
Would you think maybe is it would I need to speak to the police about it? No? Why? But this is a very serious issue.
Yes, but not
the police.
Sure.
So when Rabbi Padwa is asked here about going to the police, he says no, because it's Nazira. And this concept of Nazira means it's forbidden to report a fellow Jew to the non-Jewish authorities. And here Rabbi
Not the police. And how can you reassure yourself that this man is not doing it to others?
The police also can count issue. Police is not true.
Under no circumstances. Now I've got a question. If the police found out about it and they called me in, what would you say to me?
Well, I said, don't do that. Because usually the what can lead to the police.
But if someone else went to the police on him and I was called, what do I do then?
Let's hope not.
Sorry?
Let's hope it will not.
Now, the idea behind all of what I'm doing and showing right now is the fact that this, or the people we call white, their culture is four things: death, destruction, disease, and despair. Nothing more, nothing less. They're not real Jews, they're not real Christians, they're not real Buddha, they're not real anything. They have no history, they have no culture, just like I stated in that short May. Ancestors help me, ooga booga. That's it. These people just learned how to speak 1,000 years ago from us. I'll be right back. Oh, let me read this. An endless flood of dead and half-dead children. This is from Israel's bombing of Gaza City today. Today, on the 6th. Oh, I'm sorry. It's saying it's showing it again. So, yeah. And now we have this guy. Black Americans have started a trend of calling Chinese restaurants and plates in large orders, only to have the food prepared and then not picked up, as a form of punishment against Chinese Americans in response to the acquittal of Rick Chow. Now, if you don't know who Rick Chow is, he killed an innocent young black man, 15 years old, and shot him in the back, and he got off.
I like to place an order. Pick an order. Can I get 5 quick fried rice? Let's do large. Okay, and do you do the Chinese chicken wing? Okay, let me get 20 count Chinese wings. Okay, and that'll be all.
Would you like to take the order of which photo or spring roll?
Oh yeah, that'll be fine. Yeah, I'll take some of those.
Which one, the spring rolls or?
The spring rolls.
Okay. Spring roll. Okay, pieces in the order. So just to make sure that your order right, I have 5 orders left.
So, and this one, I'm going to do this one too. It's a 15-year-old honor roll student with no prior record steals sneakers. Tried as an adult, 5 years in prison. Wealthy 79-year-old white man raped 5-year-old girl. Gets 90 days house arrest. So as you may be able to figure out, it's not hard to figure out. The white people have no accountability among them. None. They let it go. It is the way that they are. 90% of the people who kill cops in America are white. 85% who shoot up schools are white. 80% of the roll of people on welfare are white. Hold on, let me look this up, and now this is coming from my new webpage, Facebook page, and we'll go down the list. Bear the photo. Okay, so now we have crimes of violence. Damn near 4 million, 18.1. Black only, 793,000. 25% rate. The other 75% white. Completed violence, here we go, white only. 944,310. 2,756 attempted threatened violence versus black, 483,000. And the list goes on. Rape, attempted rape, sexual assault, robbery, completed property taken with injury, without injury, attempted to take property with injury, without injury, assault, or aggravated assault with injury, threatened with weapon. And let's go on. These thugs are white. Period. Okay? Let's get into what Malcolm X says.
Revealed some very vital unconventional details on what Negroes, or rather African Americans, were truly considered to be as a nationality of race prior to being called or labeled a Negro.
Aborigines, which means what? Black folk. When you never find a white aborigine, aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark skinned people. You and I are aborigines, but you don't have to be called an aborigine.
Malcolm X stated that the rock landed on us after he returned across the waters because he learned new things. He learned that the rock had truly landed on us and that we were from these lands. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. also stated in his I Have a Dream speech that we are held in exile in our own homeland.
The Negro is the honor of society. Finds himself in exile in his own land.
Now we have a lot of scholars out there, and individuals are missing the point. How can you be held in exile in your own homeland without it being your own homeland? The tens of millions of black Americans, or rather Indians, who disappeared in 1492 did not all die in the Holocaust inflicted within America. Hundreds of thousands were shipped to Europe and Africa as Indian slaves. The whole slave trade story was given to all of us in reverse. A mass colony of Africans were not shipped.
Reverse. History was being told in reverse. That makes all the sense to me. The west coast of Africa did not include Africans. Those were Jews. Original Jews, real Jews from Spain and Portugal and the Middle East, who were transported to the West Coast. The Inquisition was retold and renamed the transatlantic slave trade. You also have the Pacific slave trade. Don't get it twisted.
From Africa to America. The truth is that black Indians were shipped from America to Europe. They were then shipped from Spain to Africa as commodity for African resources. These black Indians, now mistaken as African Americans, were shipped back to America and classified as African slaves. This part of our history is what the school systems fail to mention in history programs.
Are you with that now? And here we go. This is their MO. Couple hid missing 14-year-old girl in a cardboard box in their bedroom after raping her. Andrew Olson and Angeline Olson of Oakdale, Minnesota, are charged with the girl. A friend of one of their children was reported missing from school on May the 26th. They raped the shit out of her.
Like outright stalking charges, as police say they found a missing 14 hiding in a box in other. Bill McCoy has papers about the.
What's alleged to have happened inside this apartment complex in Oakdale, Minnesota,
They need to be gone away for a very long time.
is hard for neighbors to comprehend.
I'm beyond upset about it.
I'm speechless. It makes me sick.
Husband and wife Andrew and Angeline Olson are charged with multiple counts of criminal sexual misconduct with a 14-year-old girl. Additionally, Andrew is charged with 3 counts of possessing material of child sexual abuse.
Disgusting. Do that to children.
According to charging documents, on May
You motherfuckers do it all the time. What are you talking about?
left school without permission. The girl's father told police that she may be at her friend's house at this apartment complex in Oakdale. Police say they went to the apartment and talked with Angeline Olson, who said she hadn't seen the girl. Around 1:30 in the morning the next day, Yara Bennett went out for a smoke. She saw will forever stick with her.
Next thing you know, a little girl comes running out of the house half naked. And then I notice the woman, Angel, in the bushes. She comes out of the bushes and she's naked. Her whole top half is just out. And so I called the police.
Charging documents say inside the couple's apartment, police found the girl hiding inside a box under a pile of clothes. The couple was immediately arrested.
They hid her in a U-Haul car when the police. Took them an hour or so to find her.
Tiara is currently taking care of the couple's dog and took this video on Friday of the conditions inside their apartment. Charging documents say police took the couple's electronics and discovered videos and photos on Andrew's phone that show the 14-year-old girl and the couple engaging in sexual acts.
It's not just another story. It's another victim. It's another little girl. After going through this, I couldn't never imagine that happening to my daughter.
According to neighbors, the couple said their own teenage children had been taken away earlier this year from them by Child Protective Services. Neighbors say that 14-year-old girl kept returning, and after that happened. Last hour, the lawyer for Andrew telling me, quote, "My client is innocent and afford."
What the fuck ever? Now, this is how you deal with these people. They actually believe you're never going to do anything. Never. Woe be unto that ass for thinking like that.
Fuck with me, you give me something shit. You thinking hard.
Stop.
Hard.
Come on. No!
Come on.
Yes,
Wow. And down and out.
Man down. Man down.
Look at me.
I think that's I'm sorry.
Hey.
You gotta go.
Hell no. Wanna fuck with me? You give me.
Now, you talk about people's behavior. You can't get no more out of the box than this bullshit is. Genetically modified mosquitoes have been released, 60 million of them, by Google in the United States has launched a groundbreaking and controversial public health initiative by releasing Oxitex, bioengineered male mosquito. And you know, Bill Gates has a place in Colombia, Medellin, Colombia, that is producing 40 to 60 million mosquitoes, genetically modified, every fucking week. Nothing has been done to this motherfucker yet. Bill Gates, Fauci, and you know, a whole gang of them, making buku hundreds of billions, if not over $1 trillion, on that bullshit COVID vaccine, and now the Hanta vaccine, and now the this vaccine, and they're about to release Ebola in America. Bill Gates. When will someone deal with this motherfucker? In other words, white folks have no accountability. And now we have the white boy being the epitome of humanity.
Actually think a lot of people think it's like a superiority thing, but I almost think if we're associated with a white person, then we won't get mistreated anymore because it's like we get to hide behind them.
I can kind of see what you're saying. I don't.
You see how this shit goes? If people actually knew exactly what these white motherfuckers do, the gig is up. You know what I mean? Netanyahu, there is no place for F Island. Not against political leaders and not against anyone. Iran. Look who's breaching. You killed 50 plus political leaders in 4 countries and thousands, hundreds of thousands of children, women, and men. Basically, the children and women.
שניהם יחד עם בכירי הממשל האמריקני יצאו ללא נגע, אין מקום לאלימות, לא נגד מנהיגים פוליטיים ולא נגד אף אחד. וזה כולל לא רק את ארצות הברית, זה כולל קודם כל את מדינת ישראל בתוכנו. שמחנו שניהם יחד עם בכירי.
Obviously, he's speaking Hebrew. And this one nailed it. Whiteness is a fabrication by the Spanish and Portuguese.
Hello, Brian Woodley. I noticed that this post was incredibly disingenuous and dishonest, so I went ahead and made another version for you that was more accurate to history.
Take your pills for sleeping in the car.
You see, Shoshana, whiteness as a concept only exists as a means of maintaining a racial hierarchy in which those with white skin are seen as superior. And you see, this concept and societal structure was invented by the Portuguese and Spanish. And for it to work properly, people had to shed their cultural heritage in order to homogenize under the banner of whiteness. Only true heritage, if you would call it that, of whiteness is one of that racism and genocide. Celebrating your whiteness, you are celebrating your feigned notion of superiority branded to you by the color of your skin. Fortunately, due to the short-sightedness of your forebears, it is literally impossible for you to celebrate your whiteness while simultaneously celebrating the cultural heritage of your European ancestors. It's part of the reason why people such as the Irish or the Italians took so long to be accepted under the umbrella of whiteness, under this banner of whiteness. Your cultural heritage has no value. Sorry, sucks to suck.
They have no value, and they don't, because they have not contributed anything to the table of humanity like our ancestors have done. And this is the result of the white American soldier laughing about Iraq. There was this girl, like 15 years old, we started pimping her out for like $50 a shot. Made $500 before she hung herself. They do this, then these same people preach about humanity.
Second break. What's the big deal about making a hot sheep walk around like dogs in the park? Not affected anyone get all upset.
What else would you guys do?
Or we take a plastic and wrap it around their head. Yeah. Start, CIA showed us a lot of shit. Drink generator. Oh yeah. Pick it up to their nipples.
Ooh, ouch. Oh yeah. What was the most fun things?
The most fun thing. Definitely.
Yeah. They had chicken surgeons, man?
No, really? Something goes down, they just grab everyone around, fuck them. I mean, you're gonna have 35 trials? No, people like, fuck them. They fuck us.
Fucking do anything.
Fucking them. Yeah. Fuck them, dude. Anyone with a fucking rag on their head is fair game. Girl. Body on that girl.
They always wear it like you can't see them, right?
No, I haven't been touched yet. She was fucking crying.
Oh.
So, he started pinning around for $50 a shot. And at the end of the day, $500 for she hung herself.
She hung herself? How's come she hung herself?
No, she doesn't have. It's a culture that's really shunned upon to get raped.
That's some sick shit, and you're laughing about it. So this is how these people are.
Oh, she was fucked anyway, I guess. Yeah. In more ways than one.
All right, so okay, so he said he wasn't able to do it tonight. Okay, so now we're pretty much ending the show. But I wanted to mention too that white folk will admit, and I couldn't find it for tonight, but trust me, there's a white woman who's admitting the fact that good white folks don't exist. They're worse than the bad ones. I just want to let you know. There are no good white folks, period. Hold on. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go through all of the video that I had kept on my new Facebook page, Isaiah Israel. You can, where is that? That you can see. I don't know. You can't see it, right? Hold on, let me see. Isaiah Garcia. My name is not Garcia. But anyway, I appreciate those people who stole my motherfucking real Facebook page, Isaiah Israel. At least they give me something. So I've been blessed in a lot of ways and looking at this. So we're gonna go through these. They're the ones that I really want to talk about. And you can find these on the Facebook called Original Black God page. And I'm going to stick to the ones that spoke out to me. So here's one. All of them do, but I'm just saying.
Pyramids. The pyramids are nothing but game instructions. Who even said they were built? They may be, when this matrix was built, this simulation was built, what if that architecture was built into it? Just for you to create wonder. So what if 1,000 years from now some greedy motherfuckers is here because it's their turn to do this work? White people weren't here before because maybe they haven't elevated to a point where they can go through the 12 gates. Maybe they're doing a terrible job. Maybe they'll be here longer because they have more to figure out to do. I don't know. Maybe they won't. Or maybe they're here and they have a different criteria to go to the next level because their idea of home is not your idea of home. Just the fact that it's a mystery may be built into architecture. When you play games, there's a whole programming or a programmer that did it. As Mario, you just get in and start flowing. If Mario became conscious, he may wonder who built all this shit. I don't know, but I know what I'm supposed to do. Jump and fly and get a mushroom. So you doing the work because you was already doing this, and the ego. which is, you could actually point down there. This may be a matrix we built for this progress that's been up for more years than there are numbers. And different things that people go through it. Maybe those fucking pyramids are just a part of this simulation. Enough for you to wake up on the planet, they're there, and don't know, and maybe everyone never knew how they were there. Now all of a sudden they're older, and the Sphinx, the double lion, is even older than that. They have no idea, and they saying they don't know who put that up. The Sphinx is like 25,000 years older when they did a geo test. What's his name, man? Found there was more water damage from the Sphinx than the pyramids, which means, and based on the water damage, 25,000 or whatever fucking ridiculous number before the pyramid was there. Meaning the Sphinx was one of the first monuments that's older. They're not dealing with that because you're in the house of the double lion. So they built pyramids and all that shit around it to celebrate something that might have been built there in the Matrix, or all together, or whatever, or the simulation.
Okay.
Codes were lit.
Got that one. Now we got this one. The Kemet and what the enemy look like. Then Floridian. Now this one is a really good one. Hold on.
Giant Indians in Florida.
That I don't think about the times. I wish that I could rewind. Cause I done gave it just so many years that I won't get.
Giant.
Now it said the skeleton were discovered on a small section of land where a lone fisherman had lived for years. Scientists estimated the bones at least 500 years old and are remains of a tribe known as the Caribs, native of West Indies. They are believed to have inhabited the state and adjacent islands before arrival of Spaniards in Florida. Now you got to remember that Christopher Columbus was a black guy and a black Jew from Spain. Or Portugal, one of them. So these so-called Spaniards were not white. Let's look at this one. Copper-colored Moors, Old World Footage Part 2. I'm hoping I can get it. So you got to remember 197 million square miles this planet has that we live on. And all of it belongs to the Moors under the title of Allodial title. Also, that area that we call Palestine is in a trust as well. That was placed there over 1,000 years ago. So you know fully well that our ancestors were looking down the road. There's going to be problems. That has been addressed and resolved. You can't, no Yorugu, no Tamahu can come along and say, hey, this land is mine. It ain't none of it yours. You take it, bring it back, give it back. Okay, follow unknown corner of the truth. You see? Here. The warrior who still stand, frozen army of stone. It's getting better, you guys. This is gonna get better. Watch what is being stated.
Kaduri, antes de morir también, dijo que se había reunido con el Mesías. Pero lo más increíble es que dejó una nota con el nombre del Mesías que ellos están esperando.
No le pare.
Presta atención a lo que sigue y ni respires. El hecho de que los rabinos se estén reuniendo con el Mesías indica que algo prodigioso y apocalíptico está por ocurrir. Recordemos que se supone que ellos no creen en Yeshua, Jesús, como el Mesías verdadero.
Now, what that's been stated in Spanish. In other words, they looking everywhere, every place else where the Messiah is supposed to be, but within their heart, soul, and mind. That's basically what is being stated, and they're not the Messiah amongst them. There was a prominent Ashkenazi Jew, I can't remember his name, who stated that the Messiah, when he comes, will be black. All them white motherfuckers dropped, their jaws dropped. I can't think of his name, but he's one of the most famous, if not the most famous, white Jews. But I can't remember his name. Here we go.
I'm the real Mexican. I'm Mexica. I'm not African. I'm the real Mexican, and they're jealous of my brown skin.
We, the true indigenous people of Mexico, were put on the census in 2020 as an Afro, but we are just Mexican, nothing else.
I look like original Mexican people, but they don't like our brown skin here.
Yeah, we are the real Mexicans, but they like to hide us a lot. You'll never see us in novelas.
I'm Mexica, I'm not African, I'm the real Mexican, and they're jealous of my brown skin.
Now this is orgullosamente Afro-Mexicana, which means they're proudly Mexican, African-Mexican. But, to me, and I think for the most part, Africa begins and ends at the four corners of the world. We're everywhere, and everybody doing everything.
Forgotten past? This stunning archaeological discovery reveals intricate stone carvings of advanced starships, suggesting a cosmic war fought eons ago. Could ancient civilizations have mastered interstellar travel long before recorded history? This relic challenges everything we know about human progress and our place in the universe. Is our future?
We got to remember, when you sing these things, keep in mind there is nothing new under the sun. History is not linear, it's circular. What was, is, what is, shall be. Again. What is, what was, shall be again. That's how it goes.
Ceiling beams of the Temple of Seti I in Egypt are hieroglyphs that bear an uncanny resemblance to modern technology. The overlapping stone carvings appear to clearly depict a helicopter, a submarine, and a jet plane. Enthusiasts argue these glyphs are proof that ancient Egyptians either possessed futuristic technology or witnessed carved into the ceiling beams of the.
And here. There's nothing new under the sun, you guys.
En sus muros aparecen grabados extraños. Formas que recuerdan a máquinas, símbolos que parecen dispositivos y escenas que no encajan con su época. La historia dice que son simples jeroglíficos, pero cuando los observas con atención, parecen otra cosa.
So it says, El futuro escrito y tallado en piedra. That was written and drilled in stone or gold or whatever the case it is. It's just a repeat, you guys. That's all it is.
como si estuvieran mostrando tecnología, conceptos que hoy entendemos como energía, transporte y comunicación. ¿Y si Egipto no estaba mirando al pasado, sino al futuro? Algunos creen que poseían un conocimiento diferente, una forma de entender el tiempo que no era lineal, como si hubieran visto lo que vendría y lo dejaron grabado en piedra. No como arte, no como decoración, como advertencia. Porque si esos símbolos representan lo que hoy estamos viviendo, entonces el futuro no es algo nuevo. Es algo que ya fue observado, codificado y dejado en silencio para que solo unos pocos lo comprendan.
There is nothing new under the sun, you guys. Nothing.
And who defeated the Italians, making Ethiopia the only African country successful to resist European colonization. It served notice that Africa was not just there for the taking. Emperor Menelik
Black Americans, the Moors, who ruled the Andalusians, are the literal statues of the so-called Black Americans, the Moors, who ruled the Andalusian and Temestian empires before they were erased from history. Even Montezuma is recorded in these inventories as a Moorish king.
Moors are a transcontinental people from the Asiatic.
Are the literal statues.
I hope you guys are getting this, because this is amazing. Getting better. Hold on. This is Jerusalem in 1925. Number of black folks.
Why do you think the leader said, how are you guys Jews if you guys left black but came back white? How'd you leave black but came back white?
You got that right, bro. Now, here we go. Pay attention. What the hell? Get out of here. Oh, man. Let me start this over.
Did you know? Scientifically, the black woman is the only organism that possesses the mitochondrial DNA that has all the variations possible for every different kind of human being on this earth. When the DNA of a black woman mutates, all other types of human beings come about. This is called the Eve gene and is only found in black women.
There it is. Okay, what the hell is going on? Congo, right? Don't freeze up on me right now. Okay. Alright, well, I don't know what the hell going on with this damn computer. Look like there's always something. Oh boy. Hope let me get on out of here at least. But yeah, if you go to your Facebook and look for Original Black God, you will see it. Oh boy. What the hell? A few seconds. Let's see. I hope you guys can hear me, because I'm looking like I'm gonna have to end this without even ending it. To be honest with you, but you get the point. What I'm trying to make, that all of this is part and partial and part of our history, and we need to know that. Let not one of these troglodytes fool you into believing that you are not it. We are the it. Without us, the world cannot be and would not be. Wow. It looks like I can't get out of here. Hold on. All right, well, I don't know what the hell is going on. Look like I'm going to have to end this as it is. So please forgive me if you can hear me. I'm just letting you guys know I'm going to have to end it from here, and then we'll just pick it up next Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, like always. But I had to go out to the country and see my wife's mother. So my mother-in-law, right? So that's how that goes. But anyways, I appreciate you guys for sticking around. There were like 4 of us. And let's keep it moving, let's keep it going, and always know your history. And for the next 24/7, 365.